You've met with Prime Minister Abiy Ahmed several times. Do you think that he is actually listening to the United States or not?
Well, it's hard to understand and assess exactly moment to moment what any particular world leader is thinking. Our initial meeting now many months ago was quite encouraging, and he took some concrete steps in a positive direction. But in recent months, as the control of the battlefield has seesawed back and forth, seeing the TPLF make significant progress in the Amhara and Afar provinces and threaten the capital, and now being pushed back to Tigray province, reportedly through the use of drones by the ENDF, by Prime Minister Abe's federal forces. I am hoping that he will once again consider world opinion. He's hearing from a number of African leaders, world leaders, urging him to take this moment and to find a negotiated resolution to this conflict. Otherwise, he risks ongoing humanitarian crises, sanctions from the United States and other countries, and the potential breakup of the Federal Republic of Ethiopia.
Abiy Ahmed, as you talked about, though, has seemed to show some restraint now that the TPLF is calling for some kind of truce. In terms of what the U.S. has done to lead us to this point, the U.S. has imposed sanctions on Eritrea. They've also sort of eliminated Ethiopia from a trade program. Now, do you think that more needs to be done to fully bring both sides here to the negotiating table?
I think we need to sustain regular engagement with Ethiopia and other regional actors to make sure that this opportunity is not lost. There is a humanitarian crisis unfolding in Tigray, and there is a moment here that hopefully Prime Minister Abe will take to seek a negotiated resolution to this conflict.
I spoke to the head of the TPLF a few days ago, and I asked him, listen, if you get a ceasefire, if you get a truce, what's next for Tigray? Will you actually try to seek independence for the region? And he wouldn't rule it out. He said it was a possibility. He said that, you know, everything's on the table at this point. What is your greatest fear about the future of Ethiopia in all of this?
To see an ongoing conflict with Tigray over Tigrayan independence, I think would open the door towards the dissolution of the Federal Republic of Ethiopia. I think that is something we should all be working against. Ethiopia, in my view, is best preserved as the robust federal republic it's been for decades. This is ultimately, of course, a choice for Ethiopians, but to the extent the United States has anything to say, we will continue to try and provide humanitarian relief for those in Tigray and throughout the country who are suffering from famine, and support for a restoration of the rule of law, accountability for the widespread human rights abuses of the last year plus of conflict, and a path forward that restores peace.
You bring up an important point when you said that this is ultimately a decision for Ethiopians. As you know, Senator, Ethiopians are very proud of the fact that they're the only country, pretty much the only country, or one of the only countries in Africa that have never been colonized. I mean, obviously, the Italians occupied Ethiopia for quite some time, but they are distinct in that sense. And many Ethiopians that I've spoken to just simply do not believe that the U.S. has a right to intervene in their affairs. For Ethiopians who are watching this program who feel that way, what do you say to justify the U.S.'s continued involvement and, quite frankly, interference?
Well, I would say that the United States and the vast majority of the members of the United Nations have signed to a compact, an international declaration of human rights. And some would characterize it as interference. Our engagement in Ethiopian matters has overwhelmingly been to encourage transparency and accountability around human rights violations, to encourage foreign troops, in particular Eritrean troops, to withdraw from conflict in Ethiopia, to hold to account both Tigrayans and Amharans and members of the ENDF and members of the Eritrean forces who committed human rights abuses, and to provide humanitarian relief and support. That is engagement in Ethiopian matters in advancement of human rights, access to health care, access to fundamental qualities like, security in one's own home and property. The forced relocation of hundreds of thousands of Ethiopians in this conflict in western Tigray province by Amhara militia, and the dislocation of tens of thousands at the point of a gun was profoundly distressing. We also, as the United States, have been a champion of democracy, of free and fair elections, and provided support for elections in Ethiopia for many years.
Another country in the region where democracy, as you know, is a big buzzword is, of course, Sudan. The Prime Minister, Abdullah Hamdok, resigned on Sunday. He stepped down. The controversial deal that he signed with the military 2 months ago proved to be the beginning of his undoing. Looking back, do you think that deal that he struck with the military in November, do you believe that was a mistake?
I was in Khartoum last year and met with Prime Minister Hamdok and General Burhan and a number of other leaders, and was encouraged and inspired at that point by the steady progress being made towards civilian rule. I do think that the military coup that overthrew Prime Minister Hamdok and led to his home arrest was something he was trying to negotiate a way out of, but ultimately was not successful. We here in the United States should continue to support democracy in Sudan, the rule of law, and accountability for those who have undermined democracy and carried out this coup.
So obviously the U.S., as you say, supports democracy. Clearly the U.S. is supporting the Sudanese people. But what does that mean in practical terms? I mean, what can the U.S. do? I mean, the people of Sudan are hungry for democracy, so much so that many have lost their lives for it, protesting in the streets. What can the U.S. actually do beyond, strongly worded statements and press releases?
Well, our relationship with Sudan today is one of both encouragement and discouragement. We are offering robust development assistance. I believe at the end of last year was a $700 million commitment. In the year going forward, we're offering more than $1 billion in development and humanitarian assistance to Sudan, access to world markets and to opportunities for peaceful and positive relationships in the region. But frankly, we also are threatening to impose individual sanctions on those military and national leaders who are standing in the way of democracy. More than 50 protesters have been shot and killed in the streets of Khartoum and in other places throughout Sudan. This is a country, I'll remind you, that conducted a genocide in Darfur in the late decades of the last century under the previous rulers. So it has come through a dark and difficult history. There is a moment here of real opportunity for progress towards democracy, and it's our hope that our regional partners and allies, those that also care about stability in Sudan, will be positively engaged. So one of the other things, Zain, that we should be doing and are doing is reaching out to other countries that have close relationships in Khartoum and encouraging them to support progress towards a more sustainably democratic society in Sudan.
All right, Senator Chris Coons, thank you so much for being with us.
Thank you, Zain.